Gather round, gang. Teamwork makes the dream work. Split-screen co-op games are a staple of my childhood. I can't even count the number of hours I've spent staring at half a screen with my little brother. Burnout, Spider-Man Friend or Foe, Battlefront 2, Army of Two, Left 4 Dead, Borderlands, Halo Reach, Black Ops Zombies. There's something magical about sitting next to someone and playing a game together on a tiny little low-res screen with crazy input delay and a bowl of Cheetos betwixt. Split-screen nowadays is, well, it's a dying breed. At some point, game publishers must have realized that they would make way more money from forcing you to buy 2 copies of a game instead of 2 people playing on one, and the world has been worse off ever since. Sure, it's not a completely dead medium, but long gone is the golden age of couch co-op, and I doubt we'll ever see it again. Which is why, whenever I see a game that not only supports split screen, but requires it, I'm taken aback. Somewhere in Sweden, the land of elves and other fantasy creatures, a single game studio known as Hazelight is keeping the dream alive. Founded by Josef, the star of perhaps my favorite Game Awards clip, Hazelight is exactly what I want a game studio to be. A studio with a singular and undying dedication to their passion, in this case, co-op. I have played and loved every single Hazelight game. A Way Out, It Takes Two, and now Split Fiction. And the amazing thing is that each game has been better than the last. Playing Split Fiction has taken me back to 2010, where the only things I had to worry about were getting good grades in school and Jeff Hardy's recent departure from the WWE. Split Fiction follows the story of Mio and Zoe, 2 amateur writers put inside a simulation of their own stories by an evil megacorporation under the promise of getting them published should they do so. I think their first mistake was trusting anything that Mr. I'm Evil Man of Evil Industries here has to say, but then again, they are writers, so smart career decisions aren't their forte. Mio specializes in writing sci-fi, while Zoe does fantasy, like some sort of split fiction. After accidentally falling into the same simulation, which glitches the whole thing out, they quickly realize Mr. Evil might actually be doing something evil, and must work together to fight through the simulation to stop him. I played through Split Fiction with my lovely fiancée, Queen Rat, over the course of a few days. Everyone say hello to Queen Rat, and if you say anything mean about their gameplay, I will find you. Queen Rat put up with a lot to get this footage, including me killing them many, many times, as well as sitting next to me for an extended period of time, so I believe they deserve a standing ovation for that. Split Fiction is a game that requires 2 players, so there is some level of exclusivity when it comes to playing this game. You do need to have at least one friend, so unfortunately, that means this game is meant for the 1% of gamers capable of socializing to some degree. For the rest of you, I'm afraid you're gonna have to resort to the old-fashioned way of finding a partner. Kidnapping. Just be sure to feed and water your partner before putting them back in the basement, and to release them back into the wild once you finish the game, so that someone else may forcefully play Split Fiction with them as well. Remember, sharing is caring. Split Fiction follows a very simple formula. Each level revolves around either a fantasy or sci-fi theme, and each of them adds some sort of unique mechanic for each player that both players must use to progress. In one level, Mio has a sword, while Zoe has the ability to manipulate gravity. In another, Mio has a dragon that flies, while Zoe has one that rolls around on the ground at the speed of sound. All of the abilities that you acquire in Split Fiction have a fun and unique function. One of my biggest complaints about It Takes Two is that some of the abilities that you would get would be straight up more fun than another, but I never had that issue with Split Fiction. Every power you get is just as fun as the other, and I'm actually really excited to play it again just to see what Zoe's powers are like. Split Fiction also does a really good job of breaking up the gameplay into fun, bite-sized chunks. There's never a section that seems to drag on for too long. The game is primarily a puzzle platformer, but there's enough action, boss fights, and side stories to keep things entertaining. Every time I felt like things were just beginning to go on a bit too long, the game would change things up. The side stories are especially well done. Every once in a while, you'll come across a completely optional area to engage with that has completely new mechanics and gameplay. There was one time that I was starting to get a little tired, as my unmedicated ADHD brain doesn't really let me play any game for more than a couple hours at a time, when all of a sudden we were playing SSX Tricky. What? huh? And the game is absolutely littered with these little distractions that not only keep things fresh, but essentially have you playing an entirely different game for a few minutes before letting you get back to the progress. Playing this game is my version of jangling keys in front of a baby. It's cheap but insanely engaging entertainment the whole way through. Queen Rat can attest to the fact that I flatly stated, this game rocks, multiple times throughout our playthrough. As any good platformer should, the movement in this game just feels so good. Sprinting, jumping, climbing, interacting, everything feels so smooth. Compared to A Way Out, which is a game I liked but didn't totally love, Hazelight has come a long way in terms of making the world fun to move around in. There's so much fluidity in the way that your character moves around, whether it be jumping from platform to platform, sliding down a hill, or using pig farts to propel yourself forward. None of it feels stilted or awkward, which is amazing in and of itself considering there are so many different ways that you move in this game. There are vehicle sections where the game becomes a 2D platformer. There's even a few moments that feel just like a shooter, and it all works so well. Unreal Engine 5 has so far resulted in a pretty huge amount of hit or miss titles, but I think Split Fiction is proof that it's an engine that works for just about everything given enough time and attention. I hope this is obvious from the clips I've shown thus far, but Split Fiction is just a gorgeous game. There were several times where Queen Rat would tell me to clip a moment from the game based purely on how pretty it was. There are these moments where nothing is really happening, and the game just lets you take in how intensely pretty it is. And the game seemed to know that these would be a highlight, as there are several parts where Zoe and Mio can just sit down and talk while basking in the sight. I liked these a lot. Not only did it give us a moment to see the effort that went into the design of this game, but also to flesh out the characters a little bit more. The story's not anything to write home about, but these little moments do help quite a bit, and I'm glad they added these. In terms of whose worlds are prettier, Zoe definitely does take the cake. I think that sorta just comes with the territory of their respective genres. Fantasy settings are just generally prettier to look at than sci-fi. But that doesn't mean the sci-fi sections aren't pretty in their own way. I am a bigger fan of fantasy, so I do have a bit of a bias, but it does feel like a bit more effort went into the fantasy worlds. Nevertheless, I'm sure sci-fi fans will get a kick out of those environments as well. Something that Queen Rat and I both wanted to see and never really got was a fusion of both worlds. We figured as the simulation became more unstable, we would see the two genres begin to blend, and it sorta does right at the end, but not in the way that we were hoping. I'm trying not to show too much because the ending of this game is definitely the best part, and I strongly recommend experiencing it for yourself, but just know that you're not going to see any dragons roaming around Night City or spaceships in Middle-earth. There are other people in the simulation as well, and going into the game we initially thought that there might be some overlap with whatever those other simulations were doing, but there's none of that. Restricting the players to either sci-fi or fantasy does mean that you're basically only getting two different environments, but the developers did a good enough job to make those settings diverse and engaging that it really didn't bother me that much in the end. I'm sure making a whole bunch of different assets for even more genres also wouldn't have been super practical, so I'm not upset. One key point that I want to draw attention to is just how goddamn good these animations are. Every little movement is just so smooth and clean, and it all feels so good to control. There's just the perfect amount of both weight and weightlessness to every jump and dash, and the animations do a really good job of showing that. It's like gliding through butter, or a really nice cheesecake or something, I don't know. To tell you the truth, I didn't really have much time to listen to this game. Queen Rat and I spent so much time laughing and gushing about how much we loved this game that we didn't really pay attention to the sound design. Going back to actually, do my job and listen to the game, I think it's fine. There's not really much to say about the game's sound effects overall. They sure are sound effects. The game's soundtrack is serviceable and does the job it needs to do. It's completely inoffensive and does the job of filling in dead sound. This is a game that requires constant communication with your partner, and I imagine the developers probably knew the soundtrack wasn't something that was going to get listened to all that much, so they gave it a perfectly serviceable, though not outstanding OST to go with it. I'm fine with that personally, considering the rest of the game is such a hit, and unless you're actively trying to review the game like me, you probably won't ever notice or care. The voice acting is fine. I didn't really notice any standout performances, but I wouldn't consider any of the acting to be bad, except for maybe Mr. Evil Man. Some of his voice lines are a bit awkward to my ear.
Yeah. Screw this guy. No, you can't do this.
But this game also leans pretty heavily into the cheesiness of its own concept, so I'm not exactly looking for Oscar-worthy performances.
Fuck the Oscars!
All in all, the sound design of the game, while not a standout, is perfectly serviceable and honestly not what I played this game for anyway.
Really?
Criticism for me has always been the hardest part of making these videos. I like focusing on the positives rather than the negatives, but as a small-time journalist, it is my duty to inform you that no, Mio and Zoe do not kiss at the end of this game. Queen Rat agrees with me on this, so don't think I'm saying this from a chauvinistic man's perspective, but I really was rooting for a sensual lesbian makeout there at the end, and frankly, I'm quite disappointed. Editing Rat here. During the making of this video, I discovered this interview where Josef Ferris says that the characters of Mio and Zoe are based on his daughters. I should probably delete that last bit. We encountered a couple of bugs, like the time Queen Rat displayed just how short they are in real life by glitching through the floor, but a quick checkpoint reset fixed it, and we never lost any more than a few seconds of progress. The game also emphasized Queen Rat's shortness by making them play as a fairy at one point, which, believe me, I appreciated greatly. As for the story, I found it not all that interesting or engaging. To be honest, it was all fairly predictable. Mio and Zoe are struggling writers with a dark past that haunts them and bleeds into the stories that they've written. The story focuses on them conquering the difficulties in their lives and overcoming the simulation they've been placed in, while the big bad guy tries to stop them by messing with the game. If you're looking for a very emotional and moving story, I don't think Split Fiction should be your first choice, or your 100th, but it's serviceable, if a little bland. I didn't go into this game expecting an amazing story anyway. I went into it hoping that Queen Rat would forget about my many failings as a partner, if only for a few hours, and it certainly worked in that regard, so I consider that a win. Split Fiction is also quite short, maxing out around the 15-hour mark, and that's if you really want to stretch it. I'm typically someone who enjoys a longer game experience, but to tell you the truth, I didn't mind it too much on this one. It's a game that certainly doesn't overstay its welcome. Would I have liked a few more levels to explore and a bit more time to flesh out the characters? Yeah, sure, but I definitely don't feel like my money was wasted either. Let's also not forget that this game is perfect for a second replay where you switch characters. I'm sure Queen Rat and I will do that at some point soon because frankly, we can't get enough. All of my criticisms are completely thrown out the window though when you also consider the fact that, true to the spirit of couch co-op, only one person needs to own the game to play it, even when playing online. Split Fiction can be played using the Friends Pass, even if you don't have it. In other words, as long as one of your friends has it, so do you. This single consumer-friendly practice is enough to make me forget every flaw that this game might have. God bless you, Hazelight. You very easily could have not done that and nobody would have complained. But you did, and you've earned my respect. I award you the Rat Seal of Approval for that act alone. Plus, you can play as a Robo-Rat. How can I sit here and critique a game with this sort of gameplay? We as gamers will probably never see the era of couch co-op supremacy we once had ever again. There's too much money to be made in not doing it. But there's a part of me that still has hope. A part of me buried deep down that dreams of the days where I could sit on a broken futon with a close friend, eating the most horrid junk food known to man, and playing a game on the same television together. At one point, that friend gets frustrated and tries to smack the controller out of my hand. I retaliate by pushing him away. And then we both smile and laugh. And then we kiss. That dream has almost faded, but there's one company out there keeping it alive, and its name is Hazelight Studios. I salute you, Joseph, and your efforts to keep a bit of hope in this rat's heart. I'm sorry I said your daughters should make out. Anyway, that's all for now, gang. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. As always, it means the world to me. Uploads have been a little slow lately, but I'm hoping that'll get fixed here pretty soon. I've had some life stuff that needed sorting out, but it's all good now. Before I go, I wanted to give a little shout out to a good friend of the Rat Kingdom, Amy's Adventures.
Well, oops.
She's a smaller streamer that Queen Rat and I have both been huge fans of lately, and honestly, she deserves way more attention, so please go check her out. Queen Rat and I are also participating in her Sunhaven streams, so if that sounds like fun, link to her Twitch and YouTube will be in the description. As always, one love, see ya.